Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Julia. Hi, Julia. How are you today?
Hi, Jason. I'm doing great, thank you. I'm really excited about today's episode because I know so many English learners struggle with this problem.
That's right. Today, we're talking about something really important, how to talk English without thinking too much.
Yes, many learners tell us that they know words, they know grammar, but when it's time to speak, their mind goes blank. They start translating in their head and then they get stuck.
Exactly. And that's what makes speaking feel difficult. But don't worry, in this episode, we'll share practical steps and simple techniques to help you speak English naturally, without stopping to think about every single word.
So, if you've ever felt nervous or if you pause too much when you speak English, stay with us until the end. We'll show you how to become more confident and fluent.
Yes! This is going to be a very useful and encouraging episode. So, let's jump right in. So, Julia, let's start with the big question, why do so many English learners struggle to speak?
Good question, Jason. I think the number one reason is overthinking. Learners know the words, they know the grammar, but before speaking, they start thinking too much. Is this correct? What if I make a mistake? Will people understand me?
Yes, and when you do that, your brain slows down. Instead of speaking naturally, you're busy checking every word, like a computer processing too many tasks at once.
Exactly. And the problem is, the more you think, the less confident you feel. You start doubting yourself. Sometimes you even stay silent because you're afraid to speak wrong.
That's so true. I remember one of my students who knew a lot of vocabulary. He could write very well, but in real conversations, he always paused for a long time. Why? Because he was translating every single word from his language into English.
Yes, translation in your head is another big reason. It feels safe, but it actually makes you slower. And when you're slow, you lose the flow of the conversation.
And let's be honest, people don't care if your grammar is perfect. They just want to understand you. Overthinking makes you forget this simple truth.
Right. The real goal is communication, not perfection. But when you overthink, you focus too much on rules instead of just speaking.
So the bottom line is this. Overthinking creates fear. It slows your brain and it blocks natural speaking. That's why we need to learn how to speak without thinking word by word.
Yes, and in the next part, we'll explain what it really means to talk English without thinking.
So, Julia, we've just talked about how overthinking slows people down. But some learners might wonder, how can I possibly speak without thinking? It sounds impossible, right?
Yes, I hear that all the time. But here's the secret. When we say speak without thinking, we don't mean speaking with zero thought. We mean not thinking word by word. Instead, you speak in natural phrases, almost automatically.
That's right. Think about how you speak in your first language. You don't stop to think about grammar rules or how to form every sentence. The words just flow because you've practiced them so many times.
Exactly. For example, in English, phrases like "how are you," "I don't know," or "that's a good idea" should come out instantly, without translation.
Yes, these are ready-made chunks of language. When you train yourself to use phrases like these, your brain doesn't need to build each sentence slowly. Instead, it pulls out whole pieces of English, and that feels natural.
And that's the real goal of fluency, not perfect grammar, but smooth, automatic communication. You want to reach a point where speaking feels like driving a car. At first you think about every step, but later it becomes automatic.
I love that example. At first, driving is stressful, press the brake. Check the mirror, but with practice, you just do it. Speaking English works the same way.
So when we say talk without thinking, we mean training your brain to use English automatically in phrases without stopping for every single word.
Exactly. And in the next part, we'll share the first big step you can take to train your brain for this kind of automatic English. All right, so the first step to talking without thinking is to actually think in English. Julia, why is this step so important?
Because if you keep thinking in your native language, you'll always translate before speaking, and translation takes time. But if your thoughts are already in English, the words come out faster and more naturally.
That makes sense. So instead of thinking estoy cansado in Spanish and then translating it to I'm tired, you just directly think I'm tired.
Exactly. And the good news is, you can train your brain to do this with small daily habits.
Yes, like starting with simple thoughts. For example, when you wake up, instead of thinking, I need to brush my teeth in your language, say it in English, I need to brush my teeth.
That's a great tip. And you don't need complicated sentences. Even one-word thoughts help. For example, look at your coffee and just think hot or delicious.
Right. It's about building the habit. Over time, your brain starts switching automatically to English.
And here's another trick. Use your surroundings. When you see objects, name them in English. If you see a chair, think chair. If you see your phone, think phone.
I love that. And learners can also make short comments in their head. For example, the weather is nice today, or I'm hungry now.
Yes, these small thoughts create a kind of English environment in your brain, even if you're not in an English-speaking country.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the less you will depend on translation. You'll begin to notice that words just come to you, almost automatically.
And that's the first big step towards speaking without overthinking. If your brain is already thinking in English, your mouth can speak faster and with more confidence.
Perfectly said. And once you train your brain like this, the next step is to keep your sentences simple so you don't get stuck. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So, Julia, after learners start thinking in English, what's the next step to speaking without overthinking?
The next step is to keep your sentences short and simple. Many learners try to make long, complex sentences, and that makes them freeze.
Yes, I've seen that too. Learners want to say something like, yesterday, after I finished my homework, I went to the market to buy some vegetables, but the shop was closed, so I decided to, and then they get lost halfway.
Exactly. It's too much pressure. Instead, break it into smaller sentences. For example, I did my homework, then I went to the market. The shop was closed. Simple, clear, and no stress.
I like that. It's like walking step by step instead of trying to jump too far.
Yes, and here's the thing, short sentences are still good English. Native speakers use them all the time. You don't need to sound like a grammar book to be understood.
That's a really important point. Communication is about clarity, not complexity.
Exactly. And when you use simple sentences, your brain doesn't have to work so hard. That means you can speak faster and more confidently.
So the tip here is, don't try to be perfect or complicated. Start with short, easy sentences and let your fluency grow naturally.
Yes, and once you're comfortable with short sentences, you'll naturally start connecting them into longer ideas, but without forcing it.
Perfect. And the next step we'll share is all about dealing with mistakes and why you shouldn't be afraid of them. Okay, Julia. So far, we've talked about thinking in English and using short, simple sentences. But there's another big problem for learners: the fear of making mistakes.
Yes, this is a huge one. Many learners stay quiet because they're worried about grammar mistakes, pronunciation mistakes, or even just sounding silly.
Exactly. But here's the truth. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Nobody, not even native speakers, speaks perfectly all the time.
That's so true. Even native speakers say things like, wait, let me start again, or they use the wrong word and correct themselves. It's normal.
Yes. So if natives can make mistakes and keep going, learners should feel free to do the same. The goal is communication, not perfection.
I like to tell my students, mistakes are not your enemy, they're your teacher. Every mistake shows you where you can improve.
That's a great way to see it. And honestly, most people don't even notice small mistakes. If you say, he go to school, instead of he goes to school, people still understand you.
Exactly. The listener cares more about your message than about your grammar. If they can understand you, you've succeeded.
So the best way to practice speaking without fear is to actually speak more, even if you make mistakes. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become.
Yes. And here's a tip. Try speaking with a friend or even record yourself speaking. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Over time, you'll notice your progress.
I love that. And remember, fluency comes from practice, not from being perfect.
Exactly. The key is courage. Once you stop worrying about mistakes, your fluency will grow much faster.
Well said, Julia. And now, let's move to a very practical technique that helps learners sound natural. It's called shadowing. Julia, now that we've talked about mistakes, let's share a practical technique that really helps learners speak more naturally, shadowing.
Yes, shadowing is one of my favorite methods. It means listening to native English speakers and repeating what they say immediately, almost like an echo.
Exactly. For example, if you listen to a podcast or a YouTube video, you play a sentence and then you repeat it right away, copying the tone, speed, and pronunciation.
It's kind of like being an actor. You don't just repeat the words, you imitate the rhythm and feeling too.
Yes, and that's why it's so powerful. It trains your mouth and your brain to work together. You're not only learning words, you're learning how English sounds.
Let's give a quick example. If I hear, "What are you doing today?" I repeat right away, "What are you doing today?" Same tone, same speed.
That's perfect. And over time, shadowing helps you speak without stopping to think. Because your brain remembers the patterns.
Exactly. You don't just study grammar rules, you absorb real English from real voices.
So for learners listening, try this. Choose a short video or audio, play one line, and repeat it. Do this every day, and you'll notice your fluency and confidence growing.
Yes, even 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Shadowing builds automatic speaking habits.
And once you start shadowing, the next step is to build daily habits where you use English in your own life. We'll talk about that next. All right, Julia. So after shadowing, learners need to bring English into their daily life. What kind of habits can help with that?
Great question, Jason. One simple habit is talking to yourself in English. For example, when you're cooking, you can say, "I'm cutting the vegetables," or "the water is boiling."
That's a really good idea. You're practicing without needing a partner, and you're making English part of your daily routine.
Exactly. Another habit is to describe what you see around you. If you're walking outside, think or say, "The sky is blue, there's a dog, the street is busy."
I love that, because it's like creating your own mini English environment. You don't have to wait for a classroom, your daily life becomes your classroom.
Yes, and if you have a friend who's also learning English, you can make a rule to only speak English together for 10 minutes a day. It's fun and very effective.
That's powerful. And here's another tip. Record a short voice message every day in English. Just 1 or 2 minutes. It helps you practice speaking and also lets you track your progress.
Oh, yes, I love that. When you listen later, you can hear how much you've improved.
So the main idea is build small daily habits where you use English naturally. Even 5 minutes a day is better than nothing.
Exactly. Fluency doesn't come in one day. It comes from daily practice, step by step.
Perfect. And speaking of fluency, sometimes learners need motivation to keep going. So let's share a little inspiration next. So Julia, before we wrap up, I think it's important to give our listeners some motivation. Learning to speak without thinking can feel challenging, but it's definitely possible.
Yes, and I remember one of my students, Ahmed. At first, he was so shy. He always translated from his language into English, and he spoke very slowly. He was afraid of mistakes.
I think many listeners can relate to that. So what happened with Ahmed?
Well, he started practicing small daily habits thinking in English, using short sentences, and shadowing short videos. After a few months, his speaking changed completely. He stopped pausing so much and began to speak more naturally.
That's amazing. So the key wasn't perfection, but practice and consistency.
Exactly. And the best part? Ahmed told me, "Now I enjoy speaking English. I don't feel nervous anymore."
That's a wonderful example. And listeners, you can do the same. If you practice every day and stop worrying about mistakes, you'll be surprised at how quickly your fluency grows.
Yes. Just remember, confidence comes from action, not from waiting until you're perfect.
Beautifully said, Julia. And with that motivation, let's move to our closing thoughts. All right, everyone. That's it for today's episode on Talk English Without Thinking. We hope you found these tips helpful and that you feel more confident to practice English every day.
Yes, remember, start small, use short sentences, practice daily, and don't be afraid of mistakes. Every step you take brings you closer to speaking naturally.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode of the English Learning Podcast.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time with more tips to help you speak English confidently and naturally.
Bye, everyone. Keep practicing, and remember, English is fun when you speak without fear.